Alrighty, so today's video is going to be all about build-arounds, but specifically build-around cards that haven't yet really met their potential. I'm going to talk about what they might need moving forward if they are to work out, what are the things that are kind of preventing them from succeeding. All in all, this will be a bit more of a chill video, just the chance to get a conversation going about some cards that, I think could be cool if they had a true home, but so far they haven't really gotten it. Before we get going, please hit that subscribe button, and if you're interested in some more content from me, do check out my Patreon as well. Alright, so I kind of already covered the table of contents, right? Going to be discussing a top 10 list of build-arounds that aren't yet worthy of being built around, kind of. And what that entails is kind of, up to me. As we go, I kind of decide what it is about these cards that I think is interesting and what I think will need to happen for them to kind of be better. So let's start with number 10. It's for the Republic. And, this isn't just about this card. This card is kind of a placeholder to discuss an issue beyond just itself, right? So what is this card for? Well, it's for a go wide Republic deck, right? So it's two things: Republic synergy plus coordinate synergy, so 3 or more units in play. Now, let's talk about why I think this card is kind of worthy of this list. Well, when this card works, it's a 1-cost upgrade that gives +2/+2 and restore 2 to a unit, which is absolutely insane value for one card, right? That +2/+2 for 2 is kind of the baseline. Sometimes you get a small perk like restore 1 or something, but when you get an upgrade like this for 1 cost, it's tremendously powerful. The problem is it's not so easy to make this cost 1 for 2 reasons. First of all, the go wide aspect of this game has not yet really hit the ground running. It's quite difficult to trigger coordinate consistently, especially early in the game with like weenie units. You really see coordinate being reserved to like 1 card for the most part, which is Plo Koon. He triggers alongside a leader flip on the same turn, so you really only need 1 other unit to have stuck, right? A card like this needs much more emphasis on go wide with units and tokens. And then you come into the second issue with this card, and that's specifically the Republic tribe has not been supported. And we're going to see a few other tribal call-outs on this list, but tribes in this game, other than a few, have really been lacking. And I really think we need to get more support going. It's the big issue for a lot of tribes, including Republic, is the early units. There just aren't enough of them, right? So let's think about a tribe that works Underworld, for instance. There are tons of 2-drops and 1-drops that are good in an Underworld deck. So Cad Bane, the leader specifically, can build around a real curve, like 2s and 3s, right? That's the majority of your unit curve in a deck usually revolves around that 2 and 3 drop slot. Republic doesn't have enough good 2 and 3 drop units or 1-drop units. In fact, it doesn't really have that many good units at all, which is a problem. So I would like moving forward for all tribes to at least have like the required amount of early unit drops to make them good, to make like curves good. We got a whole set with Force just now, and even the Force curve outside of some color combinations isn't all that great. You still have to play some poor units early in the game if you want like Force unit guaranteed. So you can see even when a tribe is supported heavily by a set, it's sometimes difficult. So we really do need to see more Republic units for this card to kind of shine, but it is a very powerful upgrade if all this stuff works out. And a lot of the conversation here about this card was not even specifically about this card. It's more about like go wide being a problem and tribal synergies not being supported. And going into number 9, we're going to get a similar conversation. This is General Hux, and this is also a First Order issue. Major issue for the First Order tribe, and there's only one leader that actually cares about First Order, and that's Phasma, but I don't think that even matters that much, because if we had enough early first order units, you don't have to build around Phasma. You'd have General Hux and maybe some other payoffs. The problem, once again, early units, there just aren't enough. And even like 3 drops, right, for Hux to curve into, there aren't enough good rate units, right? For this to work, you would need the Underworld. Like, we have like 3 very quality 3 drops to play in that tribe. Or like Rebels, they get supported enough. Force, for the most part, gets supported enough. But First Order, just like Republic, gets really left out. But General Hux, this is a very powerful card. Aggro decks that get built-in card advantage, right? This is a very good thing to be doing. He's got a good amount of health, which means he's going to be able to usually buy you back a card. And the great part about him is, yes, you're taking time off to build around a draw engine, but he's actually buffing the rest of your board. So he's still applying pressure and being kind of a magnet for your opponent while buffing the rest of your team. So I think this card is fantastic. The problem is the cards that would go around with him aren't. All right, next up, First Light. So, this is the biggest issue for First Light is that it's a blue villainous card that really wants to be the top end in kind of like a pseudo aggro deck, and blue villain is just not supported for that color. For that archetype, I apologize. It's blue villain has almost entirely always been control based, and this card is quite powerful, right? The fact that you can play this from your row for the same amount that you would play it from your hand, so it's essentially drawing you a card when you play it. The idea behind this being that you can kind of do one power play and maybe close out a game. If there was a way to build around a lot of your units having damage on them, or more powerful units that actually benefit from its smuggle effect, deal 4, right? It's just very difficult right now to build that kind of deck around a blue villainous shell. So I do like this card a lot, like kind of the theme, what it's promoting. It's kind of missing the mark because, well, where would we want to include a card like this as our finisher? Right, when we're talking 7 drops, we see some of the most busted units in the game, and blue decks tend to not be good at closing out games on 7 resources. So if we get more support for more aggressive slanted villainous blue decks, and we've had some suggestions that might happen, right? Like the Asajj Pilot from Jump to Lightspeed is a blue villainous that's sort of an aggro-y build, but it doesn't really get there, and she doesn't really get there either because the rest of the card pool hasn't really been pushed in that direction. All right, number 7, Satine, and maybe this will bother a lot of people because this is the kind of card that maybe wouldn't be fun to play against if it was good, right? This is milling or discarding cards from your deck. The reason I think this is worthy of this list is because, well, alternate win conditions, I think, is an interesting space in TCGs. We don't really have much of that. There are like mill style control decks. You see like Iden control decks, basically the decks that try to burn your deck with vigilance. Bosk has done this with blue. But those decks aren't really built around milling, actually. They're just built around fatiguing you so that like they essentially just stall long enough. This is a little different because this actually adds an alternate win con. Like, this wouldn't be a 40-minute game 1 if this was good. The idea here being that you would drop this and then like immediately start burning your opponent's deck very quickly. So it wouldn't, the idea here wouldn't be to fatigue your opponent endlessly if this was able to be built around. I don't know if this is one that will ever really get there. Like, quite honestly, I don't think so. It's very difficult in a game where units can attack into each other. So she's very easy to remove from the board. If there were ways to kind of prevent that kind of interaction from her via upgrades or via other units that you can protect her very easily, then maybe it would be something worth building around. I don't think that's going to happen, but the idea here being I do like alternate win cons maybe being part of the space in Star Wars Unlimited, which is not something we've seen yet. All right, number 6, Captain Enoch. And, it's another tribal-ish thing, so similar to Hux. And for the Republic, here we have troopers, and troopers also not a tribe that has been supported enough. There's another really good payoff, which is General Tag, and Captain Enoch can be incredibly powerful. It's not always like the best turn to play, but in a low curve deck where you can really spam out troopers, this can be incredibly potent. The problem is, once again, not enough early good troopers, not enough payoffs for being in this sort of green go wide deck. We need cards that would make multiple troopers. There are a few, like the droid men, the ones that make like the droids, the 1/1s, those are troopers technically. But, when you're making tokens, Captain Enoch doesn't get buffed because those tokens never go into the discard pile. So between Enoch and Tag, I do think we kind of have very good payoffs for early game trooper synergy. So if we get a little more umph in terms of like good 1 and 2 drop troopers, maybe even a bigger payoff in the 4 and 5 resource area to kind of like really close that gap, then we might see Captain Enoch show up. All right, number 5 is Malevolence, and this is going to be kind of the exploit segment of this video. So Malevolence is a good card in a vacuum, and there are actually some other exploit cards that are pretty decent. The biggest problem being the enablers for exploit aren't. There really just wasn't enough good units that do things when they die, or good units that are like worthy fodder units to include. There were a few, but in reality, not quite enough. They were all poorly statted, too easy to remove. The payoffs, for the most part, I mean, outside of Malevolence is one of the better ones, but in a lot of cases, the payoffs were just too all in. You get blown out too hard by like 1-for-1 removal or bounce effects, right? What we needed is the enablers to not be so bad on their own so that these payoffs didn't feel so like the only good part of your deck, right? If we had more early units that both doubled as adequate early units plus were able to do something when they died, leave behind bodies, right? We had a few of those, except the bodies they left behind were really, really weak. More ways to maybe refill card advantage if you do get 2-for-1. There's a lot that kind of exploit lacked. I mean, Twilight of the Republic, honestly, was a huge miss. There's barely any playable cards in that entire set. It's for 2 reasons, right? The 2 main mechanics, coordinate and exploit, just didn't work. The game didn't allow for go wide with the coordinate, and didn't really allow for like this exploit stuff because the units were all too poor and there weren't enough good payoffs. But Malevolence is a good payoff. This card is quite good. It can come out for so cheap. A big unit with Restore is a really nice thing to be playing against aggro decks. It gives you big targets for something like Overwhelming Barrage early in the game if that's part of your build, like green and blue. It's able to also prevent damage the turn you play it. There's a lot going on for this particular card, but we didn't get enough in terms of the fodder, and we also didn't get enough for the leaders, right? Because there was 2 build around exploit leaders. One was Dooku, which does nothing for this. This already has exploit 4, so Dooku doesn't help Malevolence at all. The other was Newt Gunray, and that leader just really, really bad. Like there's just nothing you can do about how poor that leader is. So there wasn't a leader to build around with exploit for this, and it kind of missed. But maybe if it doesn't mean we can't get good fodder units in the future. I mean, Twilight, it would have to come in set 6, otherwise Twilight kind of gets rotated out. But maybe when Eternal format shows up and in future sets, we do get more early build around potential for exploit. All right, number 4, a legend from set 1, and probably one of the weakest legends in set 1, a set that had infinite good legends. But when I first read this card, I thought it was kind of broken. The idea of your red aggro deck's top end being a space unit that draws you 3 cards, right? If you're just spamming cards, playing aggressively, this is the last card you play. maybe you only have like 1 card or 0 cards left in your hand. You just draw 2 or 3, and it actually does it again when it dies. I thought this card would be crazy, and that didn't work out. We never really found a deck that would really be able to dump its hand. I tried to do this the most with Han, the first Han, because he's already discarding cards just by like ramping, right? So you could like ramp it, like use his ability incredibly aggressively for a few turns, and then just play this and immediately draw 3 cards. Didn't really work out, and I really don't know why. I don't know why this didn't end up being any good, but maybe there is still like hope that just a pure spam sort of deck with just infinite low drop units that just uses this to basically refill into more burn, right? If there is more direct damage in the game outside of something like For a Cause, you get like more of these cards that you can just like dump your hand, and then this is just like trying to find you more finishers, more ways to push damage. Maybe it draws you 3 and you can immediately play like 2 or 3 cards the next turn, and then bam, it can die and draw you more. But yeah, like part of the issue is certainly that you're already drawing 2 a turn, so it's not as easy to just dump your hand, and it's not as necessary to refill it. But it seemed like the words on this card seem powerful to me, and it just never really turned out that way. All right, number 3, a new card for Legends of the Force that I think is really, really interesting. In fact, I think the last 3 cards are all going to be from Legends of the Force. So as I have foreseen, this is a cool build around, very reminiscent of You're My Only Hope, which is a card that has seen some play in Yoda decks specifically as a resource cheating mechanic from the top of your deck. So what is the problem with as I have foreseen? The problem here is there's no villainous leader that can stack the top of your deck, right? Yoda can do it. No leader in villainy can. And you can say Thrawn. Thrawn lets you look at the top card of your deck, but he does not let you manipulate it in any way, the way that Yoda does with You're My Only Hope. And that's really what's missing here, is a way to manipulate the top of your deck, because this cheats 3 resources, right? It costs 4. It costs 1, but it reduces by 4. So you're cheating 3 resources, which is actually 1 more than You're My Only Hope. You're My Only Hope only cheats 2 resources, but this also requires you to use the Force. So that's kind of even, right? 1 cheats 3, but you have to use the Force. 1 cheats 2. So the gap here in the power level is entirely because this is just a cross your fingers and hope kind of card, whereas You're My Only Hope can actively be used with a leader. And You're My Only Hope is not a broken card in any way, and this certainly could be. Like, this is such a heavy cost reduction, but it requires you to be in a Force deck, right? It requires you to jump through a lot of hoops to do this. So I think it would be nice to be able to like have villainy in the market for like top of deck manipulation. So something that lets you put cards from the top of your deck, from your hand on top of your deck, or from your discard on top of your deck, whatever it may be. That's what's going to need to happen. And it doesn't have to come in the form of a leader necessarily, although that's the cleanest way. But if we see something like that happen, then keep an eye out for this card, because it's a huge resource cheat. Next is Doom, and this is on rate very powerful. A 2/7 that buffs your whole board with experience every turn is really good. It's not too hard to get 1 or 2 units to stick, especially in blue decks, and if you're playing high health units. So the biggest issue for Doom is that he's double blue. And maybe this will be a bit of a tangent, but the double aspects, just, they haven't been supported. Basically since set 1, which gave all of them the best card since, right? There's never been a better double aspect card than the 4 original named double aspect cards: Vigilance, Command, Cunning, and Aggression. But even within set 1, most of the double aspect cards weren't great, outside of like the Cunning, which got a trio of fantastic cards. And then Cunning also was pushed even further by DJ the next set, and that's really what kept Cunning alive. But you see, even now, double yellows is not even really played anymore, because we've now gone like 5 sets and we barely ever get any playable double aspect cards, and that's a big issue, and it's the primary issue for Doom. And another issue is all the good like cards cost 4 in double blue, or in blue in general. And I'm being a little facetious here, but like Vigilance costs 4, right? Hondo, who's actually not a bad double blue card, the 3/5 shielded that gets the steal upgrades, he's 4. The removal, Takedown, Fell the Dragon, Shatterpoint, if you were going to play with Force, those cost 4. There's just a lot of cards that cost 4 in these colors. Like, I'm definitely not even naming all of them. Like there's Sentinels, like Churret, or the 2/6, whatever it may be. So it's just a ton of power into one spot on the curve, and then the other issue, of course, not a ton of other reasons to be in double blue outside of like Doom and Vigilance. And there's a few like role player style cards, right? Equalize is decent. I mentioned Hondo, he's decent. Bendu, not even really better necessarily than other 6-drop Sentinels that exist in blue that aren't double blue. So it's just kind of a miss in double aspects. And I kind of hope that we get good double aspect cards, not just for blue. I think all of them need help, major help. Like, if we want double green, double red, double yellow, double blue to be a playable archetype, they need to support with outside of just like the one bomb card all these decks got. There's like very little pulling you in that direction. And, you know, those cards are going to rotate too soon. So really will need to find a way to, unless the goal is to have these mostly be relegated to kind of fringe archetypes, really need to find a way to kind of support these decks. And these decks also like falter because their early curve is just much weaker, right? Even with 5 sets, the 2 and 3 drop slots in a lot of decks are still like barely holding it together. And when you cut an entire color from your options, then you're just, the 2 drops aren't good anymore, right? They just aren't. And especially in like double blue, if you try to make a double blue deck, you'll notice very quickly that your early curve is pretty weak. So Doom is fantastic. Like, this card is very, very good. And I think like a go wide sort of aggressive style double blue deck would be a really cool feature. It's just not quite there yet. All right, and the last build around I want to talk about is Always 2, and also a new legend from Legends of the Force. You know, this one's pretty simple, right? The issue here is there's like barely any Sith units in the game, but I don't think you need a ton for this card to actually be good. If we had a decent couple 2 drops and a decent couple 3 drops, and you can go 2/3 into Always 2, that would be a very powerful curve, right? This card on its own gives you 4 shields and 4 experience for the cost of 4. That is, in some matchups, incredible. This wouldn't be a card that you would necessarily play against like a control deck that was holding hard removal, but in like racing situations or against like mid-range decks that don't have like blue style removal that gets through shields or whatever it might be, this card can be fantastic. Add in the fact that maybe we get some better Sith leaders. We do have a few. I think for the most part, they're all a little too weak to be built around specifically. Then this card, I think, could potentially pop off. But it's going to require definite help in the Sith unit department and probably a better Sith leader. And maybe we do end up finding like that blue villainous aggressive deck that I talked about wanting with First Light as well. If we get like a leader that flips on 4 or 5 with the Sith trait that is better than the ones we have, right? Like Revan or the 4-drop Asajj or whatever it may be. So give me a couple good 2 drops with Sith trait, 3 drops with Sith trait, give me another leader, and I think this could certainly be worthy of a build around. It's just a pretty cool card, and like, it's pretty pushed. I mean, let's compare it to, there has been like a similar style card, right? The Heroic Force payoff that gives 2 experience and a shield and you can attack, right? For some reason that card's escaping my mind right now, even though I played it so much. But this is more value than that. You're getting 2 shield tokens on 2 units and 2 experience on 2 units. That is insane value. It is so much. So maybe intentionally Sith was the trait chosen here because it's not intended to be a very supported trait, because maybe this would just be way too good if Sith units were kind of everywhere. But I'm hoping we get to kind of put this in some decks. I think this would be a pretty cool card. All right, that's what I got. Let me know if there are any build-around cards that you've been messing around with that you don't think are quite meta yet, but you kind of hope at some point will be. Tell me if you think some of these are kind of misses. Interested to hear your thoughts. That's what I got for you. And until next time, take care.